Lucas Graham sat at the head of a sleek conference table in his high-rise office, overlooking the city that thrived beneath him. The walls echoed with the whispers of success, adorned with accolades and modern art that spoke of his journey from a humble upbringing to the CEO of Graham Industries, a tech giant worth billions. Lucas was a man of vision, known for his commitment to innovation and inclusivity, at least on paper. New character introduction. Sarah Chun, Lucas's ambitious VP of marketing, stood beside him, her tablet in hand, detailing the day's agenda. Unlike Lucas, Sarah believed in genuine connection with employees across all levels. "Remember, Lucas," she said, her voice steady but firm, "the investors care about our culture as much as they do about profits." Lucas waved her off dismissively, his mind racing with thoughts of the upcoming investor meeting. He had built this empire meticulously, and he wasn't about to let anything, especially not a janitor, undermine that image. As he stepped into the elevator, he noticed Tommy, a janitor in his mid-50s with a bright red cap emblazoned with "Make America Great Again." The hat clashed violently with Lucas's vision of corporate decorum. "Is there a reason you think it's appropriate to wear that here?" Lucas asked sharply as he approached Tommy, who was quietly mopping the floor. Tommy looked up unperturbed. "It's just a hat, sir. Doesn't affect my work." Lucas's irritation flared. "It's not just a hat. It's a political statement that doesn't align with our values." Tommy shrugged lightly. "With all due respect, Mr. Graham, isn't this place supposed to respect different perspectives? The handbook says so." Lucas's jaw tightened at Tommy's calmness. He was used to people folding under pressure. This was different. "I wrote that handbook," Lucas retorted sharply. "This is your first and final warning." Tommy nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Understood, sir." As Lucas turned away, he felt an unsettling flicker of doubt about his authority. Tommy's calm demeanor lingered in his mind like an itch he couldn't scratch. The lobby buzzed with whispers as employees witnessed the confrontation unfold. New character, Jenna, an intern who had just started at Graham Industries, watched wide-eyed from the coffee station. "Did you see that?" she exclaimed to her colleague Mark. "He didn't even flinch." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "That guy's guts." Most people would have crumbled under Lucas's glare. Meanwhile, Sarah observed from her office doorway, concern etched on her face. She had always admired Tommy's work ethic and knew he was well respected among staff. "Do you think he'll get fired?" Jenna asked nervously. "I doubt it," Mark replied confidently. "Tommy's been here longer than most of us. He knows how to navigate this place." In HR, Laura, a manager known for her strict adherence to protocol, frowned as she typed an email regarding workplace conduct. Lucas had every right to call him out, she said to her assistant Mia. "Politics have no place at work." Mia hesitated before responding. "But it was just a hat. It feels harsh." Laura leaned back in her chair. "Harsh or not, Lucas runs this company." Back in the janitor's closet, Tommy hung up his mop and reflected on the exchange. He had always believed in treating everyone equally, something his late brother Samuel had instilled in him before his tragic passing. Tommy Walker wasn't just any janitor. He was Samuel Walker's brother, the co-founder of Graham Industries who had passed unexpectedly years ago. Samuel had entrusted Tommy with shares of the company in his will, a legacy he never intended to claim through power, but through observation and influence. New character introduction. Angela, an old friend of Samuel's who worked in IT and often visited Tommy during breaks. "Hey, Tommy," Angela said one day as she entered the janitor's closet with a sympathetic smile. "I heard about your run-in with Lucas." Tommy chuckled softly. "Just another day at work. You know," Angela continued thoughtfully, "Samuel would be proud of how you handle things here." Tommy nodded, but remained silent. He wasn't interested in being seen as anything other than what he was, a hard-working janitor observing the world around him. As lunchtime approached, conversations about Tommy's confrontation spread through Graham Industries like wildfire. Employees debated whether Lucas would retaliate or if Tommy would stand firm against corporate pressure. Sarah called for an impromptu meeting with her marketing team to discuss company culture and employee engagement strategies. "We need to ensure everyone feels valued here," she stated passionately. "If we're going to claim inclusivity as our brand promise, we need to live it, starting now." The team nodded in agreement. They were eager for change, but wary of Lucas's rigid approach. Meanwhile, back in his office after the investor meeting where everything went smoothly but felt hollow without genuine connection among employees, Lucas couldn't shake off the image of Tommy's red cap or the way he stood up for himself without fear. As the day wore on, the atmosphere in Graham Industries remained charged. Employees exchanged knowing glances, speculating about the fallout from Lucas's confrontation with Tommy. Whispers of admiration for Tommy's calmness mingled with apprehension about potential repercussions. New character introduction. Jenna, a junior marketing associate, found herself at the center of the gossip mill. She had always been an observer, but today she felt compelled to voice her thoughts. "Can you believe how Tommy stood up to Lucas?" she asked her colleague, Mark, as they huddled near the coffee machine. "Most people would have crumbled." Mark nodded, his brow furrowed in contemplation. "Yeah, but you know how Lucas is. He won't let this go. He's all about control." Jenna sighed, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "But what if Tommy's right? What if we're supposed to respect different perspectives? Isn't that what we preach?" Meanwhile, in the executive suite, Lucas sat at his desk, trying to focus on his work, but unable to shake off the encounter with Tommy. The red hat loomed large in his mind, a symbol of defiance that challenged everything he believed about corporate image and authority. "Emily," he called out to his assistant as she entered his office. "Give me a report on employee morale. I want to know how this incident is affecting our team." Emily hesitated for a moment but quickly nodded. "Right away, sir." As she left, Lucas leaned back in his chair, grappling with a sense of unease. He was used to being in control. His world was meticulously curated, and yet here was a janitor who had thrown him off balance. In the janitor's closet, Tommy reflected on the day's events while organizing cleaning supplies. He had expected some backlash after standing up to Lucas, but felt surprisingly at peace with his decision. New character introduction. Angela, a longtime friend of Samuel's who worked in IT, popped her head into the closet. "Hey, Tommy, you okay? I heard what happened." Tommy smiled faintly. "I'm fine. Just doing my job." Angela stepped inside and leaned against the doorframe. "You know people are talking about you, right? They're impressed." "Impressed?" Tommy chuckled softly. "I just spoke my mind." "Exactly," Angela said earnestly. "You stood up for what you believe in. Not everyone has that kind of courage." Tommy shrugged, still processing the encounter with Lucas. "I just want to make sure Samuel's vision for this company is honored. It's not about me or my hat. It's about what we stand for." Angela nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. It's about respect and inclusivity, something that seems lost on some people around here." The next day, Lucas called an emergency board meeting to address the incident and its implications for company culture. As he prepared his presentation slides, he felt a mix of anxiety and determination. New character introduction. Laura, head of HR, entered the room as he set up his laptop. "Lucas, I think we need to tread carefully here," she cautioned. "What do you mean?" Lucas asked sharply. "The employees are divided on this issue," Laura replied carefully. "Some see your actions as necessary for maintaining professionalism. Others view them as authoritarian." Lucas frowned, unwilling to show any sign of weakness. "I'm not running a daycare. I'm running a business." Laura crossed her arms and met his gaze firmly. "And that business needs a healthy culture to thrive. If you push too hard against employees' values, you risk losing their trust and productivity." As the meeting commenced and board members filed in, Lucas took a deep breath and steeled himself for what lay ahead. The boardroom buzzed with tension as members took their seats around the polished table. Lucas stood at the head of the table, ready to address the elephant in the room. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," he began, projecting confidence despite his inner turmoil. "We need to discuss yesterday's incident involving one of our janitors and how it reflects on our company culture." A board member named Richard, known for his conservative views, interjected immediately. "Lucas, you did what needed to be done. That hat has no place in our company." Another member, Maya, countered passionately. "But isn't it our duty to foster an environment where everyone feels accepted? That includes respecting personal beliefs, even if we disagree with them." Lucas felt a surge of frustration, but maintained his composure. This isn't about personal beliefs. It's about professionalism and maintaining our brand image. Maya leaned forward earnestly. And what image are we projecting when we stifle individual expression? We risk alienating our employees and creating a culture of fear. Richard scoffed dismissively. Fear is necessary in business. Without it, how do we maintain order? As voices rose and opinions clashed around him, Lucas realized that this discussion was more than just about Tommy or the Red Hat. It was about the very essence of Graham Industries and its future. As the afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Graham Industries, the atmosphere remained thick with anticipation. Employees exchanged hushed conversations about the confrontation between Lucas and Tommy. Their opinions divided, but their curiosity piqued. In the marketing department, Sarah Chun gathered her team for a brainstorming session. The mood was tense, but she sensed an opportunity to address the underlying issues that had surfaced from the incident. "All right, everyone," she began, her voice steady. "I know we're all aware of what happened earlier today. I want to hear your thoughts, not just about Tommy's situation, but about our company culture as a whole." New character introduction. David, a junior marketing associate known for his outspoken nature, raised his hand eagerly. "I think it's ridiculous how Lucas handled it. It's just a hat. We should be promoting diversity of thought, not punishing it." Another team member, Clara, nodded in agreement. "Exactly. If we're going to claim we value inclusivity, we need to practice it." Tommy was just expressing himself. Sarah listened intently as the discussion unfolded. "What if we create a campaign that highlights our commitment to diversity? We could feature employees from all levels, showcase their stories and perspectives." David grinned, his enthusiasm contagious. "That would be amazing. It could help shift the narrative and remind everyone that every voice matters here." As ideas bounced around the room, Sarah felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this incident could catalyze meaningful change within the company. Meanwhile, in his office, Lucas sat in silence after the board meeting. The discussions had left him unsettled. He had expected unwavering support from his board members, but instead found himself facing dissenting opinions. "Emily," he called out, breaking the silence as she entered with a stack of reports. "What do you think about today's incident?" Emily hesitated before responding. "Honestly, sir, I think it's made people question your leadership style. They see you as someone who prioritizes image over substance." Lucas bristled at her words, but knew she spoke from observation rather than malice. "I'm running a business here, Emily. Image matters. But so does culture," Emily countered gently. "If you want Graham Industries to thrive, you need to consider how your actions impact morale." Lucas leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples as he contemplated her words. For the first time, he felt the weight of his decisions pressing down on him. Back in the janitor's closet, Tommy continued his work with a sense of purpose. He had always believed in leading by example rather than demanding respect or authority. New character introduction. Marcus, a fellow janitor who had worked alongside Tommy for years, entered the closet with a knowing smile. "Heard you gave Lucas a run for his money today," Marcus said with a chuckle. Tommy shrugged nonchalantly. "Just doing my job?" "Yeah, right," Marcus replied, shaking his head in disbelief. "You stood up to him. That takes guts." Tommy paused for a moment before responding thoughtfully. "It's not about guts. It's about integrity. I want to honor Samuel's legacy by ensuring everyone feels valued here, no matter their position." Marcus nodded appreciatively. "You're doing just that, my friend." As days passed and the buzz surrounding Tommy's confrontation continued to ripple through Graham Industries, Lucas found himself increasingly aware of the disconnect between his vision for the company and the reality on the ground. In an effort to regain control over the narrative, he decided to host an all-hands meeting, a platform where employees could voice their concerns directly. "Thank you all for gathering here today," Lucas began as he stood before a sea of employees in the large conference room. "I want to address recent events and clarify our company values moving forward." The room was filled with mixed expressions: curiosity, skepticism, and hope. "I understand there have been questions regarding our culture and inclusivity," Lucas continued, trying to project confidence despite feeling vulnerable under their scrutiny. Graham Industries prides itself on innovation and respect for diverse perspectives. A voice piped up from the back, Jenna, who had been quietly observing from her seat. But what about when those perspectives clash with company values? How do we navigate that? Lucas felt a flicker of irritation, but quickly suppressed it. We must find common ground while upholding our standards. Tommy stood at the back of the room as well, listening intently. He hadn't planned on speaking, but felt compelled to contribute. Mr. Graham, he said steadily when given a chance to speak. Respecting different perspectives is essential for growth. But it's also important to remember that everyone deserves dignity, regardless of their role in this company. The room fell silent as Tommy's words hung in the air like an unspoken truth. Lucas looked at Tommy and then scanned the faces of his employees, many nodding in agreement with Tommy's sentiment. "Thank you for your input," Lucas said slowly, realizing he needed to adapt rather than resist this moment of vulnerability. "I propose we create an employee council, a platform where everyone can share ideas and concerns openly," Lucas announced unexpectedly. Gasps of surprise filled the room. This was not what they had anticipated from their CEO. "I want us to work together toward fostering an inclusive culture where every voice is heard," he continued earnestly. The atmosphere shifted as employees exchanged glances filled with cautious optimism. In subsequent weeks following that pivotal meeting, Graham Industries began implementing changes that reflected its commitment to inclusivity and transparency. Sarah led initiatives focused on employee engagement, while David spearheaded campaigns highlighting diverse voices within the company. Tommy became an unexpected symbol of resilience, a reminder that every employee mattered regardless of title or position. During one afternoon break in the janitor's closet, Angela visited Tommy again with excitement in her eyes. "Did you hear? They're launching an employee council. You should join." Tommy chuckled softly at her enthusiasm, but shook his head gently. "I appreciate it, Angela, but my role is here, observing and supporting from behind the scenes." "You're more influential than you realize," she insisted passionately. As conversations flourished within Graham Industries about culture and respect for individual differences, Lucas found himself reflecting on how far he had come since that fateful encounter with Tommy. This segment continues exploring character development while showcasing how events unfold within Graham Industries after Tommy's confrontation with Lucas. As the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere at Graham Industries shifted subtly but noticeably. The initial shock of the confrontation between Lucas and Tommy faded, but its impact lingered like a shadow over the company. Employees were more cautious, their conversations tinged with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. In the marketing department, Sarah Chun and her team continued to develop their campaign focused on inclusivity and diversity. They brainstormed ideas for a series of videos showcasing different employees' stories, highlighting their backgrounds, experiences, and contributions to the company. "Let's make sure we feature people from all levels," Sarah urged her team. "We need to show that every voice matters, from the executives to the janitors." David chimed in enthusiastically. "What about interviewing Tommy? He has a unique perspective that could resonate with a lot of people." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "That's a great idea. He embodies the spirit of resilience we want to highlight." Meanwhile, in his office, Lucas found himself increasingly distracted by the ongoing discussions about company culture. He had initially dismissed Tommy's comments as irrelevant, but now he couldn't shake the feeling that he had underestimated the janitor's influence. New character introduction. Rebecca, Lucas's mentor from his early career days, reached out to him for a coffee meeting. She had always been a voice of reason in his life. "Lucas," she said as they settled into a quiet cafe nearby, "I've heard some interesting things about your recent encounter with Tommy." Lucas sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It was just a minor incident. I don't see why it's become such a big deal." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "Sometimes minor incidents reveal major truths. Have you considered what this means for your leadership style?" "I'm running a business," Lucas replied defensively. "I can't afford to let personal beliefs interfere with professionalism." Rebecca leaned forward, her tone serious. "But what if those personal beliefs are what make your employees feel valued? You need to find a balance between maintaining your standards and fostering an environment where everyone feels respected. Lucas mulled over her words as they finished their coffees in silence. As part of his commitment to improving company culture, Lucas announced the formation of an employee council during a company-wide meeting. The council would serve as a platform for employees to voice their concerns and suggestions directly to management. Today marks a new chapter for Graham Industries, Lucas declared confidently before the gathered employees. We are committed to fostering an inclusive environment where every voice is heard. A ripple of excitement spread through the crowd. Employees exchanged glances filled with hope. Members will be elected from various departments, Lucas continued. This council will help us address issues and implement changes based on your feedback. Tommy stood in the back of the room, listening intently. He felt a mix of skepticism and curiosity about whether this initiative would lead to real change or merely serve as window dressing. Later that day, Sarah approached Tommy while he was cleaning in the lobby. "Hey Tommy," she called out cheerfully. "We're putting together some videos for our new inclusivity campaign, and we'd love to feature you if you're interested." Tommy raised an eyebrow, surprised by her request. "Me? Why would anyone want to hear from a janitor?" "Because your perspective is valuable," Sarah replied earnestly. "You've seen things from ground level that others haven't. Plus, it's time we highlight voices like yours in this company." Tommy hesitated, but felt a flicker of intrigue at the idea of sharing his story. As preparations for the campaign progressed, Tommy agreed to participate in an interview with Sarah. They scheduled it for Friday afternoon in one of the conference rooms. On the day of the interview, Tommy arrived early, feeling both nervous and excited. He had never been in front of cameras before, but he understood the importance of sharing his story. "Thanks for doing this," Sarah said as she set up her equipment. "I think it's going to make a real impact." Tommy nodded slowly, trying to calm his racing heart. "I just want people to understand that everyone here matters, no matter their role." As they began filming, Sarah asked questions about Tommy's journey and his thoughts on company culture. "What do you think makes Graham Industries unique?" she prompted. Tommy paused thoughtfully before responding. "It's not just about technology or profits. It's about people, how we treat each other, and how we value every contribution." His words resonated deeply with Sarah as she captured his genuine passion for creating a positive workplace environment. Meanwhile, Lucas watched from his office as clips from Tommy's interview circulated among employees via internal communications channels. He couldn't help but feel uneasy. He had never considered how powerful one person's story could be in shaping perceptions within the company. Emily knocked on his door before entering cautiously. "Lucas, have you seen the video of Tommy? It's getting a lot of positive feedback." "I don't see how that matters," Lucas replied tersely. "But it does matter," Emily insisted passionately. "People are connecting with him on a personal level, something they haven't done with you or other executives in ages." Lucas crossed his arms defensively, but couldn't ignore her point entirely. Perhaps there was something valuable in this newfound focus on employee stories, a way to bridge gaps he hadn't realized existed. The first meeting of the employee council took place shortly after Tommy's interview aired. Employees gathered in one of the larger conference rooms, filled with anticipation and hope for meaningful change. Lucas opened the meeting by addressing everyone present. "Thank you all for coming today," he began sincerely. "This council represents an opportunity for us to listen, to understand your concerns, and work together toward solutions." New character introduction. Jenna, who had been observing quietly until now, raised her hand hesitantly before speaking up. "What steps will be taken if our concerns aren't addressed?" Lucas paused at her question. It was one he hadn't fully considered yet. "That's an important point," he admitted slowly. "I want this council to be effective, not just symbolic. We will establish clear follow-up procedures based on your feedback." As discussions unfolded around various topics, from workplace policies to inclusivity initiatives, the atmosphere shifted toward collaboration rather than confrontation. Weeks passed as Tommy became more involved with both Sarah's campaign and the employee council meetings. His insights were valued by colleagues who began seeing him not just as a janitor, but as someone who genuinely cared about improving their workplace culture. One afternoon during lunch break in the break room, Jenna approached Tommy while he was enjoying his meal alone at a table. "Hey, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story, she said shyly. It really inspired me, and I think it's inspiring others too. Tommy smiled warmly at her compliment, but remained humble about his role in shaping perceptions within Graham Industries. I'm just one voice among many, he replied modestly. But your voice matters, Jenna insisted earnestly. You've shown us that everyone has something valuable to contribute, even if they don't hold an executive title. Tommy appreciated her sentiment. It reminded him why he chose this path after Samuel's passing, to honor his brother's legacy by nurturing respect across all levels within Graham Industries. This segment continues exploring character development and how Tommy's involvement influences company culture positively, while highlighting Lucas's evolving perspective on leadership and inclusivity within Graham Industries. As the days turned into weeks, the narrative surrounding Tommy and Lucas continued to evolve within Graham Industries. The incident had sparked a wave of discussions about workplace culture, respect, and the importance of diverse perspectives. Employees were more engaged than ever, and many began to reconsider their roles within the company. In the marketing department, Sarah was busy compiling feedback from employees about their experiences in the workplace. She wanted to ensure that the upcoming campaign would genuinely reflect the sentiments of the staff. Let's not just focus on the positive stories, Sarah urged her team during a brainstorming session. We need to include challenges people face too. It's important to show that we're all in this together. David nodded in agreement. That's a great point. If we only showcase success stories, we risk alienating those who feel overlooked or undervalued. Meanwhile, in his office, Lucas was grappling with the aftermath of his confrontation with Tommy. He had initially dismissed it as a minor inconvenience, but now he found himself reflecting on his leadership style and its impact on employee morale. New character introduction. Richard, a seasoned board member known for his no-nonsense approach, scheduled a meeting with Lucas. As they sat across from each other at the conference table, Richard wasted no time getting to the point. Lucas, he said bluntly, we need to talk about your handling of that janitor incident. It's causing ripples throughout the company. Lucas leaned back in his chair defensively. I was enforcing company standards. That hat was inappropriate. Richard shook his head. It's not just about the hat. It's about how you communicate with your employees. You can't expect them to respect you if you don't respect them first. Lucas felt a flicker of irritation, but knew Richard had a point. I'm trying to maintain a professional environment here. And what does that mean? Richard pressed. A sterile workplace where everyone is afraid to express themselves? That's not sustainable. The conversation left Lucas feeling unsettled. He had always prided himself on being decisive and authoritative, but perhaps he needed to rethink his approach. The employee council convened regularly, providing a platform for open dialogue between staff and management. Tommy attended each meeting quietly, observing and occasionally contributing insights based on his experiences. During one session, Jenna brought up an important issue that resonated with many employees. I think we need to address how we handle feedback, she suggested earnestly. Right now, it feels like there's a disconnect between what employees want and what management implements. Tommy nodded in agreement. I've seen firsthand how people can feel discouraged when their voices aren't heard. It's crucial that we create channels for honest feedback, without fear of repercussions. The council members discussed various strategies for improving communication within the company, including anonymous surveys and regular check-ins with teams. As they brainstormed ideas, Sarah felt a growing sense of hope. Perhaps this was the change they needed to foster a more inclusive culture at Graham Industries. One evening after work, Lucas found himself wandering through the empty halls of Graham Industries. The office was quiet, illuminated only by the soft glow of desk lamps and the distant hum of machines winding down for the night. He paused outside a conference room where he could hear laughter coming from inside, a group of employees celebrating a successful project launch. For a moment, he felt an ache of longing. He had always focused on results and performance, but had neglected the human aspect of leadership. Hey, Lucas, Sarah called out as she exited the room with a few colleagues. Join us. We're celebrating our latest campaign launch. Lucas hesitated but felt compelled to accept her invitation. As he stepped inside, he was greeted by smiles and cheers from his team. "Congratulations," he said genuinely as they raised their glasses in celebration. One of the team members raised an eyebrow playfully. "You know, we wouldn't have gotten here without your support." Lucas smiled awkwardly, but felt warmth spreading through him as he watched his employees interact freely, sharing stories and laughter without fear or judgment. The following week marked another turning point for Graham Industries as Tommy's interview video went live internally and externally, sparking conversations beyond just their office walls. During a lunch break in the break room, Jenna excitedly shared her thoughts with colleagues. "Did you see Tommy's video? It was so inspiring. He really captured what it means to value every employee." "I know," Clara chimed in. "It's refreshing to hear someone speak so honestly about their experiences here." As discussions flourished around Tommy's message of inclusivity and respect for all roles within the company, Lucas found himself becoming increasingly aware of how this narrative could redefine Graham Industries' image. That afternoon, Lucas called an impromptu meeting with Sarah and David in his office. "I want us to leverage Tommy's story more effectively," he announced decisively. "Let's create a campaign around employee empowerment, highlighting not just successes but also challenges faced by our staff." Sarah beamed at his suggestion. "That sounds fantastic. We can showcase real stories from different departments, making sure everyone feels represented." David nodded enthusiastically. "This could really shift how people perceive our company culture." As plans for the new campaign unfolded, Tommy became an integral part of its development. His insights were invaluable as they crafted narratives that resonated with employees across all levels. One afternoon, while reviewing footage from interviews with various employees, Sarah turned to Tommy with admiration. "You know, your perspective has brought so much depth to this project." Tommy shrugged modestly, but felt a sense of pride swell within him. "I'm just sharing what I've observed, what I believe is important for us all." Their collaboration strengthened their bond. Tommy began to see Sarah not just as an executive, but as someone genuinely committed to fostering change within Graham Industries. Meanwhile, Lucas watched from afar as Tommy interacted with employees during filming sessions, his calm demeanor putting everyone at ease while encouraging them to share their stories authentically. As excitement built around the upcoming campaign launch, Lucas decided it was time for Graham Industries to hold its annual company retreat, a chance for employees to bond outside of work and discuss future goals in an informal setting. He envisioned this retreat as an opportunity for open dialogue, a chance for everyone to voice their thoughts without fear or hierarchy looming over them. At a planning meeting with Sarah and David, Lucas stated confidently, "Let's make this retreat different from previous years. We'll focus on team-building activities that promote collaboration and inclusivity." David grinned widely at Lucas's enthusiasm. "That sounds great. We could even incorporate workshops where employees can share their experiences and learn from one another." Sarah added thoughtfully, "And we should ensure that every voice is heard during discussions. Maybe even have breakout sessions where smaller groups can dive deeper into specific topics." Lucas nodded approvingly. He could feel excitement building within him as they planned for something that could truly reshape their company culture. The day of the retreat arrived with bright sunshine illuminating the outdoor venue chosen for this year's event. A sprawling park filled with trees and open spaces perfect for team-building exercises. As employees arrived in groups filled with laughter and chatter, Lucas felt a sense of anticipation wash over him. It was time for Graham Industries to embrace change fully. After opening remarks emphasizing unity and collaboration, they divided into teams for various activities designed to strengthen relationships among colleagues while encouraging vulnerability and sharing personal stories. During one such activity, focused on storytelling around campfires later that evening, Jenna stood up nervously but determinedly shared her journey into marketing, a path filled with challenges she had overcome along the way. Tommy listened intently as she spoke. Her honesty resonated deeply within him, reminding him why he chose this path after Samuel's death, to honor his brother's legacy by nurturing respect across all levels within Graham Industries. As more employees took turns sharing their stories under twinkling stars overhead, each tale weaving together threads of resilience, the atmosphere transformed into one filled with camaraderie and understanding. a stark contrast from earlier days when fear overshadowed connection. By the end of the retreat weekend filled with laughter, shared meals, heartfelt conversations, and newfound friendships, Lucas stood before everyone once more ready to close out this transformative experience. Thank you all for being so open today. He began sincerely looking around at familiar faces now imbued with warmth rather than apprehension or judgment. He felt proud witnessing this shift firsthand within his company culture, a shift he longed for since taking charge years ago. This is just the beginning. Lucas continued passionately, raising his voice, slightly above murmurs echoing throughout. Attendees gathered closely around campfires still glowing brightly against night sky backdrop. Their eyes reflecting hopefulness mirrored back toward him. A shared commitment toward fostering an inclusive environment, moving forward together hand in hand toward brighter future ahead. This segment continues exploring character development while showcasing how events unfold during Graham Industries' company retreat, a pivotal moment leading toward lasting change within its culture. As the days passed after the confrontation, the atmosphere at Graham Industries shifted in ways Lucas had not anticipated. Employees were buzzing with excitement and curiosity, and the narrative surrounding Tommy Walker began to take on a life of its own. In the break room, a group of employees gathered around the coffee machine, animatedly discussing the latest developments. "Did you see Tommy's interview? He's got such a calm presence," Clara remarked, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "It's like he knows something we don't, right? He's not just a janitor. He's got this wisdom that really resonates," Jenna added, leaning in closer to hear the latest gossip. Meanwhile, Lucas sat in his office, trying to focus on his work, but finding it increasingly difficult to ignore the buzz surrounding Tommy. He had always prided himself on being in control. Yet here was a janitor who had unexpectedly become a focal point of conversation. New character introduction. Marcus, a fellow executive who had been observing the situation closely, knocked on Lucas's door and entered without waiting for an invitation. "Lucas, we need to talk about Tommy," he said bluntly. Lucas raised an eyebrow. "What about him? He's becoming a symbol for employees, a voice they didn't know they needed," Marcus replied, crossing his arms. "You might want to consider how this could impact your leadership." Lucas felt a flicker of irritation at Marcus's suggestion. "I'm not worried about one janitor's opinion." "Maybe you should be," Marcus countered. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's about the company culture." As Tommy continued his work at Graham Industries, he remained largely unaffected by the whirlwind of attention surrounding him. He focused on his tasks while quietly observing the interactions among employees, both good and bad. One afternoon, as he was cleaning near the marketing department, he overheard Sarah discussing plans for their upcoming campaign focused on inclusivity. "I think we should feature stories from all levels of the company," Sarah suggested passionately during a team meeting. "We need to show that every voice matters, especially those we often overlook." David nodded in agreement. "Tommy should definitely be part of this campaign. His perspective is invaluable." Tommy felt a mix of surprise and appreciation at their consideration, but remained humble. He hadn't sought recognition. He simply wanted to honor Samuel's legacy by ensuring respect for all employees. Later that week, Sarah approached Tommy while he was taking a break in the janitor's closet. "Hey, Tommy, we'd love for you to participate in our campaign," she said with enthusiasm. "Your story could really inspire others." Tommy hesitated, unsure if he wanted to step into the spotlight. "I'm just doing my job," he replied modestly. "But that's exactly why we want you," Sarah insisted. "You have a unique perspective that can help change perceptions around here." After some contemplation, Tommy agreed to participate in the campaign. The day of filming arrived, and he found himself standing in front of the camera for the first time. "Just speak from your heart," Sarah encouraged as she adjusted the camera settings. "Share your experiences and what it means to work here." Tommy took a deep breath and began sharing his story. How he came to work at Graham Industries and what it meant to him to honor his brother's legacy by ensuring respect for all employees. As he spoke candidly about his experiences and observations within the company, Sarah watched with admiration. His authenticity shone through, captivating not only her, but also everyone who would later view the footage. Meanwhile, Lucas watched from his office as clips from Tommy's interview circulated among employees via internal communications channels. He couldn't help but feel uneasy. He had never considered how powerful one person's story could be in shaping perceptions within the company. Emily entered his office again, her expression serious. "Lucas, have you seen how well-received Tommy's interview is? Employees are rallying around him." "I don't see how that matters," Lucas replied tersely. "But it does matter," Emily insisted passionately. "People are connecting with him on a personal level, something they haven't done with you or other executives in ages." Lucas crossed his arms defensively, but couldn't ignore her point entirely. Perhaps there was something valuable in this newfound focus on employee stories, a way to bridge gaps he hadn't realized existed. The employee council continued meeting regularly, providing a platform for open dialogue between staff and management. During one session, Jenna brought up an important issue that resonated with many employees. "I think we need to address how we handle feedback," Jenna suggested earnestly. "Right now, it feels like there's a disconnect between what employees want and what management implements." Tommy nodded in agreement. "I've seen firsthand how people can feel discouraged when their voices aren't heard. It's crucial that we create channels for honest feedback, without fear of repercussions." The council members discussed various strategies for improving communication within the company, including anonymous surveys and regular check-ins with teams. As they brainstormed ideas, Sarah felt a growing sense of hope that perhaps this was the change they needed to foster a more inclusive culture at Graham Industries. With renewed energy and focus on inclusivity within Graham Industries, Sarah led the launch of their new campaign highlighting employee stories, featuring Tommy prominently as a symbol of resilience and respect for all roles within the company. The campaign kicked off with an internal video showcasing interviews from various employees sharing their experiences, how they overcame challenges, and what it meant to be part of Graham Industries. During a company-wide meeting announcing the campaign launch, Sarah addressed her colleagues excitedly. "This isn't just about marketing. It's about celebrating our diverse voices. We want everyone to feel valued here." As applause filled the room, Lucas stood beside her, his heart swelling with pride as he watched employees connect over shared stories. As weeks turned into months after launching their campaign, focused on inclusivity and respect for all roles within Graham Industries, Lucas found himself reflecting on how far they had come since that fateful encounter with Tommy Walker. He glanced at photos on his desk, images capturing moments from past successes juxtaposed against snapshots of employees celebrating milestones together. A reminder that success wasn't just defined by numbers, but by relationships built along the way. As he prepared to leave for home one evening, a sense of fulfillment washed over him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. The realization that true leadership meant embracing vulnerability while valuing every individual within an organization regardless of title or role. As the days turned into weeks following the confrontation, the atmosphere at Graham Industries continued to evolve. The buzz surrounding Tommy Walker had transformed him from a mere janitor into a figure of intrigue and respect among employees. Conversations about him filled break rooms and hallways, and many began to question the status quo. One afternoon, Lucas called an emergency meeting with his executive team, feeling the pressure of the growing narrative around Tommy. He needed to regain control over the company's image and address the undercurrents of dissent that had surfaced. "Lucas, we need to acknowledge what's happening with Tommy," Marcus said as they gathered around the conference table. "He's become a symbol of resistance against your leadership style." Lucas frowned, leaning back in his chair. "He's just a janitor. We can't let one person disrupt our corporate culture." "Disrupt or challenge?" Marcus countered. "Tommy represents a voice that many employees resonate with. Ignoring this could lead to bigger problems down the line." Lucas felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had always been confident in his authority, but now he sensed that his grip was slipping. "What do you suggest?" "Why not invite him to speak at our next all-hands meeting?" Marcus proposed. "Let him share his perspective. It could show that we value all voices within the company." Lucas hesitated, weighing the implications of such a move. But deep down, he knew that avoiding the issue would only exacerbate tensions. The day of the all-hands meeting arrived, and employees filled the auditorium with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Lucas stood at the front, flanked by his executive team, feeling the weight of their collective gaze. "Thank you all for being here today," Lucas began, trying to project confidence despite his nerves. "We've been having important conversations about our company culture and inclusivity." He paused, glancing at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "Today, we want to hear from someone who has a unique perspective on our workplace, Tommy Walker." The audience erupted in murmurs as Tommy stepped onto the stage, his red hat still perched on his head, a bold statement that seemed to challenge everything Lucas had tried to control. As Tommy took a deep breath and faced his colleagues, he felt a mix of anxiety and determination. He had never imagined himself speaking in front of so many people, but knew this was an opportunity to honor Samuel's legacy. "Thank you for having me," Tommy began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. "I've been working here for a while now, and I've seen both the good and bad sides of our culture." He shared stories about his experiences, how he had witnessed acts of kindness among employees, but also moments where fear stifled creativity and innovation. "I believe we can do better," Tommy continued passionately. "Every person here contributes to our success, whether they're in an executive office or cleaning up after lunch. We need to respect every role and ensure everyone feels valued." The room fell silent as Tommy's words resonated deeply with many employees who had felt similarly voiceless. After Tommy finished speaking, there was a moment of stunned silence before applause erupted throughout the auditorium. Lucas stood frozen at the front, grappling with emotions he hadn't expected. Admiration for Tommy's courage mixed with frustration at how easily he had captured the room's attention. "Thank you, Tommy," Lucas finally said as he regained his composure. "Your perspective is invaluable." As employees cheered for Tommy, Lucas felt a shift within himself. A realization that leadership was not just about authority, but about listening and valuing every individual's contribution. In the days that followed, Graham Industries began implementing changes based on feedback from employees, starting with regular forums where staff could voice their concerns openly without fear of repercussions. Tommy became an integral part of these discussions, helping bridge gaps between management and staff while advocating for inclusivity across all levels. New character introduction. Sarah, who had been instrumental in launching the campaign focused on employee stories, collaborated closely with Tommy to ensure that everyone felt represented within company initiatives. Together, they worked tirelessly to create an environment where every voice mattered, a legacy that echoed Samuel Walker's vision for Graham Industries. As Lucas watched these changes unfold from his office window, overlooking the bustling city below, he finally understood what it meant to lead with empathy and authenticity. This conclusion wraps up the story by showcasing how Tommy's influence leads to meaningful change within Graham Industries while allowing Lucas to grow as a leader. As the days passed after the confrontation, the atmosphere at Graham Industries shifted dramatically. Employees were buzzing with excitement, speculation, and curiosity about Tommy Walker, the janitor who had stood up to Lucas Graham. Conversations about him filled break rooms and hallways, and many began to question the status quo. In the break room one afternoon, a group of employees gathered around the coffee machine, animatedly discussing the latest developments. "Did you see Tommy's interview? He's got such a calm presence," Clara remarked, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "It's like he knows something we don't, right? He's not just a janitor. He's got this wisdom that really resonates," Jenna added, leaning in closer to hear the latest gossip. Meanwhile, Lucas sat in his office, trying to focus on his work, but finding it increasingly difficult to ignore the buzz surrounding Tommy. He had always prided himself on being in control, yet here was a janitor who had unexpectedly become a focal point of conversation. New character introduction. Marcus, a fellow executive who had been observing the situation closely, knocked on Lucas's door and entered without waiting for an invitation. "Lucas, we need to talk about Tommy," he said bluntly. Lucas raised an eyebrow. "What about him?" "He's becoming a symbol for employees, a voice they didn't know they needed," Marcus replied, crossing his arms. "You might want to consider how this could impact your leadership." Lucas felt a flicker of irritation at Marcus's suggestion. "I'm not worried about one janitor's opinion." "Maybe you should be," Marcus countered. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about the company culture. The day of the all-hands meeting arrived, and employees filled the auditorium with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Lucas stood at the front, flanked by his executive team, feeling the weight of their collective gaze. "Thank you all for being here today," Lucas began, trying to project confidence despite his nerves. "We've been having important conversations about our company culture and inclusivity." He paused, glancing at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "Today, we want to hear from someone who has a unique perspective on our workplace." Tommy Walker. The audience erupted in murmurs as Tommy stepped onto the stage, his red hat still perched on his head. A bold statement that seemed to challenge everything Lucas had tried to control. As Tommy took a deep breath and faced his colleagues, he felt a mix of anxiety and determination. He had never imagined himself speaking in front of so many people, but knew this was an opportunity to honor Samuel's legacy. "Thank you for having me," Tommy began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. "I've been working here for a while now, and I've seen both the good and bad sides of our culture." He shared stories about his experiences, how he had witnessed acts of kindness among employees, but also moments where fear stifled creativity and innovation. "I believe we can do better," Tommy continued passionately. "Every person here contributes to our success, whether they're in an executive office or cleaning up after lunch. We need to respect every role and ensure everyone feels valued." The room fell silent as Tommy's words resonated deeply with many employees who had felt similarly voiceless. After Tommy finished speaking, there was a moment of stunned silence before applause erupted throughout the auditorium. Lucas stood frozen at the front, grappling with emotions he hadn't expected. Admiration for Tommy's courage mixed with frustration at how easily he had captured the room's attention. "Thank you, Tommy," Lucas finally said as he regained his composure. "Your perspective is invaluable." As employees cheered for Tommy, Lucas felt a shift within himself, a realization that leadership was not just about authority, but about listening and valuing every individual's contribution. In the days that followed, Graham Industries began implementing changes based on feedback from employees, starting with regular forums where staff could voice their concerns openly without fear of repercussions. Tommy became an integral part of these discussions, helping bridge gaps between management and staff while advocating for inclusivity across all levels. New character introduction. Sarah, who had been instrumental in launching the campaign focused on employee stories, collaborated closely with Tommy to ensure that everyone felt represented within company initiatives. Together, they worked tirelessly to create an environment where every voice mattered, a legacy that echoed Samuel Walker's vision for Graham Industries. As Lucas watched these changes unfold from his office window, overlooking the bustling city below, he finally understood what it meant to lead with empathy and authenticity. Months later, as Graham Industries thrived under its new culture of inclusivity and respect for all roles within the company, Lucas reflected on how far they had come since that fateful confrontation with Tommy Walker. He glanced at photos on his desk, images capturing moments from past successes juxtaposed against snapshots of employees celebrating milestones together. A reminder that success wasn't just defined by numbers, but by relationships built along the way. One afternoon during a company-wide meeting, celebrating their achievements since implementing these changes, Lucas stood before his employees once more. "I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone who has played a significant role in shaping our culture here at Graham Industries. Tommy Walker," Lucas said warmly as he gestured toward Tommy, standing proudly among his colleagues. The room erupted in applause as Tommy smiled humbly. "Your courage to speak up has inspired us all," Lucas continued. "You've reminded us that every voice matters and that true leadership is about serving others." As applause filled the auditorium once more, Lucas felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. The realization that true leadership meant embracing vulnerability while valuing every individual within an organization regardless of title or role. And so began a new chapter for Graham Industries, one defined by respect, inclusivity, and shared success, a legacy that would honor Samuel Walker's vision while paving the way for future generations. This conclusion wraps up the story by showcasing how Tommy's influence leads to meaningful change within Graham Industries while allowing Lucas to grow as a leader. As the days continued to unfold following the confrontation, the tension at Graham Industries lingered like a storm cloud. Employees were abuzz with speculation about Tommy Walker and how Lucas Graham would respond to the unexpected challenge to his authority. In the break room, conversations flowed freely, fueled by curiosity and a sense of camaraderie that had begun to blossom among the staff. "Did you hear what Tommy said during the meeting?" Claro exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. "He really stood up for himself." "I know. It's about time someone called Lucas out," Jenna added, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "I mean, he's always so focused on appearances." Meanwhile, Lucas sat in his office, grappling with the fallout from the confrontation. He had expected to silence dissent with his authoritative stance, but instead, he had ignited a fire within his employees, a fire that questioned the very foundations of his leadership. New character introduction. Emily, Lucas's assistant, entered the room and noticed his furrowed brow. "Lucas, you need to address this situation with Tommy," she advised gently. "Ignoring it will only make things worse." Lucas sighed, running a hand through his hair. "What do you suggest?" "I can't just let a janitor dictate company culture." "Maybe it's time to listen," Emily replied, her tone firm yet compassionate. "Tommy has a perspective that could help us grow as a company." After much deliberation, Lucas decided it was time to take action. He scheduled an all-hands meeting to address the situation openly and invite dialogue among employees. On the day of the meeting, employees filled the auditorium with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Lucas stood at the front, flanked by his executive team, feeling the weight of their collective gaze. "Thank you all for being here today," Lucas began, trying to project confidence despite his nerves. "I want to address recent events and how we can move forward together." He paused for a moment before continuing. "I've realized that we need to foster an environment where every voice is heard, no matter their role within this company." The audience stirred with interest as Lucas spoke candidly about his own shortcomings as a leader and the importance of inclusivity. "I'd like to invite Tommy Walker to share his thoughts," Lucas announced, gesturing toward Tommy, who sat among the employees. As Tommy approached the stage, he felt a mix of anxiety and determination. This was an opportunity not just for himself, but for all those who felt overlooked in the corporate hierarchy. "Thank you for allowing me to speak," Tommy began, his voice steady despite the weight of expectation in the room. "I've seen both sides of this company, the good and the bad, and I believe we can do better." He shared stories about his experiences, how he had witnessed acts of kindness among employees, but also moments where fear stifled creativity and innovation. "I believe we can create a culture where everyone feels valued," Tommy continued passionately. "It starts with listening to each other and respecting every role, whether it's in an executive office or cleaning up after lunch." After Tommy finished speaking, there was a moment of stunned silence before applause erupted throughout the auditorium. Employees cheered for Tommy's courage and honesty, while Lucas felt a shift within himself, a realization that leadership was not just about authority, but about listening and valuing every individual's contribution. In the days that followed, Graham Industries began implementing changes based on feedback from employees, starting with regular forums where staff could voice their concerns openly without fear of repercussions. Tommy became an integral part of these discussions, helping bridge gaps between management and staff while advocating for inclusivity across all levels. As Lucas watched these changes unfold from his office window, overlooking the bustling city below, he finally understood what it meant to lead with empathy and authenticity. Months later, during a company-wide meeting celebrating their achievements since implementing these changes, Lucas stood before his employees once more. "I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone who has played a significant role in shaping our culture here at Graham Industries. Tommy Walker," Lucas said warmly as he gestured toward Tommy, standing proudly among his colleagues. The room erupted in applause as Tommy smiled humbly. "Your courage to speak up has inspired us all," Lucas continued. "You've reminded us that every voice matters and that true leadership is about serving others." As applause filled the auditorium once more, Lucas felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. The realization that true leadership meant embracing vulnerability while valuing every individual within an organization regardless of title or role. And so began a new chapter for Graham Industries, one defined by respect, inclusivity, and shared success. A legacy that would honor Samuel Walker's vision while paving the way for future generations. This ending provides closure by illustrating how Tommy's influence leads to meaningful change within Graham Industries while allowing Lucas to grow as a leader.